Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay.
Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay. I am your host, Mike Jokum. Joining me today is none other than the famous James Hinchcliffe. James, first off, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well. Thanks for asking. Yourself?
I'm hanging in there, man. And second question comes from my wife, is how are the dogs enjoying quarantine so far?
I think the dogs are sick of seeing Becky and I around the house. You know, they're like, we used to have run of the place while you guys were out. Now you're always here to yell at us to get off the couch and everything. So I think they're anxious for us to get back to work.
I do have to say, your Weller looks like he's the size of a small bear at this point already.
Yeah, we're quickly approaching medium-sized bear. I think it's funny, you know, when you get that kind of dog. He's a Bernedoodle. He's technically a mini Bernedoodle, which is kind of funny to think. But it's a little bit of lucky dip with the size of those dogs. They can really range from 30 to 60, 65 pounds. Really depends on luck of the draw. And so we weren't sure what we were getting, and he's 8 months and he's tipped over 50. So he's still got a bit of room to go. I think is going to be a big boy.
Wow. That's insane. That's actually, before, I know everybody listening is probably like, why are you starting with this? But that's actually how I got my wife into paying attention to INDYCAR was, look, James Hinchcliffe has a dog. Look at that dog's Instagram. And now she actually pays attention to racing. So that you did help win my wife over a little bit into the racing world.
There you go. Well, the dog did. We'll give the dog the credit because he's the cute one.
So we'll go to some racing here. You've got Texas coming up now in just a couple weeks. Any thoughts or concerns on the fact that it's kind of lumped into one day, the first race of the year after a unique and longer than usual off season?
Yeah, the longer off season is definitely the weirdest part of it all. You know, I mean, if you think back to 2016, we got rained out of the first attempt at Texas and, you know, came back 2 or 3 months later, whatever it was. We got 10 minutes of practice and picked up the race on lap 77 and everything was fine. So the idea of doing a one-day show, I don't think really throws anybody for a loop. It's something that we've sort of done in the past in a similar sort of capacity. But the weirder thing is just, at that point of the year, you know, we were 3/4 of the way through the season when it happened last time. This is going to be everybody's first race since Laguna last September. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of, more cobwebs to brush off. And I think everybody's going to have to understand that they've got to play a little smarter, play a little safer. You know, like I said, we're not 3/4 of the way through the season. We're just starting it off. And so there's no reason to make silly moves and to push too hard, too fast. It's hopefully still going to be a long season and lots of racing involved. But it's easy to get things wrong, you know, trying to rush it all by going, like I said, too hard, too quick in Texas.
Yeah, for sure. That was my thought was, okay, 2-hour practice before is good, but what happens if somebody, you know, cracks a suspension piece? Do they have enough time, and do they have enough people to, you know, fix a car in a couple hours to get running again?
It all depends. You know, it all depends on how big the hit is and how prepared the team is. But you know, we've had days of a race weekend on an oval rained out that led to, you know, qualifying before the race on the same day. And so that's not at all a situation that we're not used to. And, you know, INDYCAR has, sort of guidelines in terms of how much time minimum they give teams in between sessions in case of something like that. And I think all that's still being followed. So I think it'll be fine.
Awesome. So last Texas-based question. I don't know how much testing you've personally had with the new aero screen. Is there any concern with the, you know, just not being familiar with its characteristics on a racetrack before Texas?
You know, I don't think it's concern about about, characteristics. Let me rephrase that. I don't think concern is the right word. I think that every driver and especially every engineer is dying to have more testing and wish they were able to come a little bit more prepared. But, at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same for everyone. The rookies all did a test day at Texas after Dakota Open test. So we know the cars have run on track with the screen and there wasn't any problems, at that test. Unfortunately, no Andretti cars were able to run at that one because all of our guys are not classified as rookies. But it's the same sort of scenario for everyone, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how teams sort of handle the task. And I think it's certainly going to speak to the level of, simulation that each team has available to them and what we roll off with on first practice and Saturday morning.
Awesome. So we will switch gears here slightly. After a couple of years away from Andretti, you're back in the stable there. Does that help your confidence going into Texas, knowing the team, knowing some of the guys that are there, and kind of being familiar with how things are typically run at Andretti?
It does for sure. If I was walking into an organization that I never worked with, I would certainly, be a little more apprehensive and maybe have a little bit more work to do in ingratiating myself to the team. But, luckily there's a lot of familiar faces there, a lot of people that I worked with, in my stint at Andretti back in 12 to 14. And that does definitely give me a degree of confidence. The tricky part is, as I was supposed to be heading into my first race at the GP last weekend, we were already 4 races into the season, and I would have been at all those races. I would have been, attending engineering briefings, really getting myself back up to speed with the procedural things that happen at Andretti, how they go through things. It's been 5 years since I was there, so there's definitely some things that have changed, and it's grown quite a bit since I last ran there. And so it would have been really nice to have at least a little bit of an understanding of, some of their protocols and procedures, and some time to sort of, sleep on that stuff and let it marinate. Now we're going to be talking about it all at the shop, but the first time I actually see it is going to be the first time I'm doing it in Texas. So that part's a little bit tougher, but at the end of the day, we've just got to get in and do the best job that we can.
Makes sense. So switching gears here slightly, this is a fan question. We saw Joseph Newgarden's extreme artistic skills on social media the other day. Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. It's actually still better than I would do, but nonetheless, has James Hinchcliffe picked up any new quarantine hobbies?
So I swore to myself that by the time this is all done, I wanted to be able to juggle. I have yet to start practicing, so I'm definitely not on a positive stretch there. But then the other thing that I've taken up trying to pick up is Spanish. I've been on Duolingo for a little bit every day, trying to learn a little bit of Spanish. So we'll see how well that holds up once we get back to work.
I love it. So on a similar note, you, Alex, and Tim all appeared on a podcast called Whiskey Cast that a couple years ago I was a guest on. So I wanted to know, since then, have you found any new whiskey or bourbons that really caught your eye?
Honestly, what's interesting about quarantine is you're not out there shopping and trying as much bourbon as you are. And so no, I think is the short answer. I've been plowing through the stockpiles that I had before quarantine started.
Same. Yep. And it's much more difficult in Pennsylvania to get anything right now other than what you can get at the local brewery, because all of these state-run liquor stores are closed. So that's
good call.
A challenge. I've actually asked Mark at Whiskey Cast a couple of times, what do I do? So, and he doesn't really have a very good answer for me, because there is no good answer. Did you get one of the fancy Whiskey Cast tasting glasses? Yeah.
Mark sent through a bunch of them. So I've got a bunch of nice Glencairns now to add to the collection.
Awesome. So another question that typically Jess would ask, unfortunately she had to go to work early, so she couldn't join us. If you had to pick 3 guests to bring to dinner, whether they're still with us or not, who would your 3 guests be?
Oh, great. That's a great question. Well, I'd want to have dinner with Greg Moore. I never got the chance to really get to know my hero, and it sucks because I've become such good friends with, Dario and TK and guys that were really tight with him. So it would have been cool to get to know him. So I'd like to have Greg at dinner. I would like to have Seth MacFarlane because I think he's one of the funniest guys out there, and it'd be cool to have have a dinner and a bourbon with him. And last but not least, I would probably want to have Commander Chris Hadfield, who's a Canadian astronaut, very prominent, well-known Canadian astronaut, because I'm a huge space nerd, and I'd love to pick his brain on a bunch of things.
That's fantastic. Did you go to one of those NASA things that a couple IndyCar guys went to a couple of years ago? Am I mixing up who went over to one of the NASA stations?
No, that's definitely me. I have made no efforts to hide that I have blatantly abused my position to try to get into as many NASA facilities as possible, and I've been pretty successful actually. We've managed to make it to a couple, and with the help of Drew Foystel, who's an astronaut based in Houston. I've got to know him and his family a little bit over the years. He's a big race fan, and he's made it out to a bunch of the events. And he gave us a pretty awesome backstage tour of Johnson Space Center, and we went up to the one in Huntsville, and we've done a bunch. Joseph and I went to space camp together. We went for a day, which was cool. So yeah.
So Drew is the astronaut who posts the images of tracks from space, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, I love that guy. I don't think I would ever have the guts to do anything like that, so more power to him there. Let's see here. Which fellow racer, whether it be IndyCar or any other form of racing, has given you the best career advice, and what would that advice have been?
I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of people that have, been willing to share advice and things like that. But the one that always stands out to me was actually from Dario. And it was my rookie season. It was in Long Beach. I think that was only my second race. And, I was still trying to grasp the fact, that I was actually on the IndyCar grid, and I was racing with these guys, with the Darios and the Dixons and the Hunter Rays and the Powers. And, especially guys like Hunter Ray, who I've been watching since I was in diapers because he's that old. It was still a lot. I'd be on track during practice, and I'd see, Scott's car in my mirrors, and I would just pull over and let him go because I didn't want to get in the way. I felt almost out of place. And we were walking back from practice on Friday, and Dario came up, and he was like, "So man, how's it going out there? What do you think?" And we were chatting a bit about it, and I said to him, like, "Man, I'm still just like, I just can't believe all the people we're on track with. It's nuts." And he puts his arm around me and he goes, "Hinchy, my boy, let me tell you something." He goes, "You spend your whole life trying to get to this point, and then you realize you're racing against the same jackasses you have been since go-karts, and they're just those people." And I kind of laughed when I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm on the grid with J.R. Hildebrand and with Charlie Kimball and with Marco Andretti and Graham Rahal and all these guys I've been racing against since I was 12 years old. And he's like, me and Scott and TK and Ryan, we're all those same guys. We're just a bit older. Like it's the same group of people. Don't even worry about who any of these people are. They're just cars on the track. And it's the same guys you've been racing against your entire life. And for some reason, when he said that, it sort of humanized the whole grid for me. And I stopped looking at them like the legend Scott Dixon. It's just, that's the guy driving the 9 car. And it really did kind of help me gain a lot of confidence on track. I
love it. And if everybody listening doesn't repeat that question in a Dario accent, you have failed quarantine so far. So let's see here. This is a fan question, and I don't remember who asked it, so I apologize to whoever submitted it. If you added one driver to your Team Discord iRacing fun that's, I guess, now on Monday nights, which driver would you most want to add?
I think it'd be fun to have Dale Jr. in it because he's a great iRacer. He's a great dude. He likes whiskey, and I think he likes talking a bit of smack and having a bit of fun. So I think he would fit in with Team Discord and LCQ League Mondays very, very well.
So for those who are listening and maybe aren't familiar now that the official iRacing is done, tell us a little bit about LCQ Monday for those maybe who haven't yet watched.
Yeah, well, those of you that haven't watched, I'm going to firmly suggest you remove surgically the rock from on top of you and come join what little bit of the real world is left. And that exists on Monday nights at 7:30 we created something called the LCQ League, Monday Night Madness. And basically, it's a group of degenerate racing drivers who get on iRacing, and after weeks and weeks of people taking this way too seriously and sucking all the fun out of it, we decided to kind of be the anti those guys. And we show up where not only do we not practice, we're not allowed to practice. We can't practice because they don't even tell us what cars we're racing or what tracks we're racing on until we log on. We get a 10-minute practice session, which also doubles as a qualifying, and we go straight into the race. And we do 3 different races a night, 3 different cars, 3 different tracks. And the whole time we're attached on a Discord, which is all broadcast. And it's just a lot of smack talk, a lot of, attempts to strategize with other guys that inevitably fail spectacularly. A lot of inside jokes come out of it, but it's the most entertaining thing I think that's happening in sport right now. So Monday, 7:30, Conor Daly streams it on Twitch, but we're also getting a broadcast online now. So it's a whole thing.
I love it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch. My wife keeps asking me, why am I laughing at my phone when with headphones in while she's watching whatever reality TV happens to be on. So I venture to say that, and this isn't even, I wasn't going to bring this up, that you are happy the regular, I don't want to say regular iRacing, whatever you call it, is now in the past.
I am, and the reason is because now I can enjoy iRacing. So like I'll openly admit that I was not active on iRacing beforehand, and I honestly didn't have a good excuse. It's not that I didn't want to. I just hadn't done it. And so obviously we were all sort of thrust into this. And at first I thought it was sort of supposed to be something kind of fun that everybody could get involved in, and it would give the fans something to watch and the sponsors a little more airtime, et cetera, et cetera. And the problem is that when you get, 24 IndyCar drivers doing anything, could be playing solitaire, it still becomes the most competitive thing on earth. And so teams then got involved, and guys had multiple engineers per car, and they were spending 20 plus hours a week practicing, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll be honest with you, even in quarantine, I just didn't have that kind of time, And I didn't feel like I'm a newly married man. I didn't feel like getting divorced in my first year of marriage. And so I opted to not spend quite so much time. So I did the IndyCar challenge at exactly, the level that I was willing and able to compete at it. And yeah, that was like a 15th to 20th place effort. And so that's where I finished in the races where my internet didn't crap out and I didn't even make the grid, which did happen more than once. So yeah, it was iRacing in general. I love it. And I'm so happy that I've been introduced to it in the way that I have. And I intend to be a very active user on it from here on out. But the way the IndyCar thing came together and the way it developed and sort of unfolded, I was outgunned in a big way, and I was not in a position to really compete, so it wasn't as much fun.
It certainly ended up, I'll just leave it as it was very interesting, and like you, I do like staying married as a somewhat newly married man myself. So when there is not racing on, I try to pay attention. So I definitely understand not spending 12 hours a day on iRacing or whatever some of those guys were doing. Moving on to a real world question. Last October, you and Alex did Bathurst. I know you've talked about it on your show a little bit, that it was an experience you want to get back to. So what was Bathurst like? I know you guys, I think from what I understand, you didn't have the best car, but tell us a little bit about the amazing circuit down there. That
is absolutely one of the coolest tracks in the world. And, I've been lucky. I've got to travel a bit for motorsport, and I've either raced on or seen a bunch of cool tracks around the world. But I'd always heard a lot about Bathurst, and, I'd obviously watched it, and I've been a big fan of the V8 series for a long time. But getting the opportunity not only to go there and see it, but to actually, take part in it was a bucket list item for sure. And man, that place is gnarly because it's half, normal permanent road course racing track and half rally stage up and then down a mountain. And it's a commitment track like no other. Across the top of the mountain, you're talking blind elevation, fourth gear corners with walls on it's like street course confines at those speeds with blind entries and elevation. And and that's before you even get to the downhill section, which is the really tricky part, so trying to learn a new car in the V8 car and try to learn the track all at the same time was a massive undertaking and a huge ask for Alex and myself. But, Walkinshaw and Andretti United did a great job preparing us as best they could. And even that, we felt completely out to lunch for most of the week, but it was an awful lot of fun. And I really hope we get the chance to go back.
So for those who aren't super familiar with the car, how does a V8 supercar drive compared to maybe an IMSA car or an Indy car? What are the big differences other than the obvious? Right.
So the V8 car is it's kind of a hybrid between like a prototype car and a stock car. It's definitely got a little bit more technology and the rest of it than a stock car, but it's not quite a prototype level of downforce and technology. And so it's kind of an interesting middle ground. It's actually a lot of fun in that sense. It's got tons of power. It's very undertired, so it's very, very low on mechanical grip, which that's a pretty good recipe for good racing right there. It's very unique in the way it deals with weight transfer, compared to a prototype or even a GTLM car and IMSA. They're a little bit more, I guess, kind of race car bred. And so it requires a very unique driving style. And that was one of the hardest things for both Alex and myself, was almost unlearning all the things that we knew as keys to making an IndyCar go quickly, and reprogramming our brain and our muscle memory to do what needed to be done to get the lap time out of a V8 supercar. So it's just different inputs and how you apply, the brakes and how you input the car, how you work the tire and all that is all a bit different. So definitely a lot to learn in just a couple of days.
You guys you have what, 3-4 testing days before the actual race?
Yeah. So we had 3 days, like 2.5 days at a different track that was very small and short and slow and absolutely nothing like Bathurst whatsoever. And then, you get about 2 days of practice at Bathurst before the race. So kind of 3.5 days all in to at the actual track. And it's, you're tire limited and you're all the rest of it. So you got to be a little bit careful, but it was, like I said, it was a great experience. And Bathurst is one of those races that it's on people's bucket list, whether you're a driver or a fan, just because it's so cool.
Oh yeah. 100% agreed there. So we'll wrap it up with 2 easy questions here. One is something we've been doing on the podcast all year with drivers that we have on. If you had to pick one song for our driver Spotify playlist, whether you listen to before the race or after the race, what song or artist would it be?
Oh man, it'd be, if I could just pick an artist, I'd go with AC/DC. I love getting amped up to some AC/DC before a race.
I love it. Definitely right up my alley there. And this last question, and again, James, thanks very much for the time. This afternoon here, you were roommates with Conor Daly for a little while, or Conor Daly was roommates with you, I should say. So this is a fan question from David Lighting. Your favorite Conor Daly roommate story?
Absolutely not repeatable on a podcast.
Your favorite potentially repeatable?
Top 3, I don't think are. Okay, so here's my favorite one that I can actually tell people. So my living room has a fireplace and the TV is sort of like wall mounted, above the fireplace. And so, fair enough. It's probably a little higher than the ideal viewing angle would be, but whatever. We don't watch a lot of TV there, so it's not the end of the world. And, Conor, as everybody knows, and certainly now, if you didn't before, he's a big gamer. He's a big Call of Duty and whatever other first-person shooter games are out there. And one day, so he would always play on that TV. Fair enough. And one day I came home and I walk in the front door. And as you walk in the front door, you can see right into the living room. And I walk in the front door, and Conor Daly is taken one of my dining room chairs, cleared off the coffee table in the living room, and put the chair on top of the coffee table, and was sitting in the chair on top of my coffee table, so that way he was at a better angle for gaming and shooting mystical warlocks or whatever it is you do in the games he was playing. I remember walking the door and just like, Conor, what the hell are you doing? Get off my coffee table. It's insanity.
That is fantastic. And yes, most of those games that Conor plays, I am terrible at, nor do I understand, but they do look like fun.
I mean, he seems to be good at them, and he's making a lot of famous Twitch and gaming friends. So he's obviously he's moving up in the gaming world. So I give him all the credit in the world for that.
I love it. That's a fantastic story. James, again, thanks for the time today. Stay safe over these quarantine weeks and months, and look forward to seeing you back out on the track, and good luck in Texas.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.
You too.